Good afternoon. I'm Christine Taylor Lewis, and on behalf of the Afro-American Historical Association of Fauquier County, I thank you for your support, and I welcome you to this, our 9th in a series of conversations with family historians and others who will share their genealogy research or provide information related to local African-American history and culture. Now, in keeping with our mission at AAHA, we endeavor to collect, document, preserve, and share U.S. history with a focus on the lives of African Americans here in Fauquier County. Our hope is that this series of virtual events will in some way encourage you to seek out the extensive collection of historical data that's available in our museum, our library, our research rooms, as well as the various social media outlets such as Facebook, YouTube, Zoom, and of course our website, where you will find thousands of old photographs and links to our various databases, as well as an interactive story map with vivid pictures and narratives describing the origins of African-American communities, churches, and schools in Fauquier County. So remember to visit us at aahafauquier.org. That's aahafauquier.org. Now, our guest for today will talk to us about his extensive genealogy research. So Michael and I go back to the days of our youth, though he's a few years younger. I remember when he would come to Haiti and play with the boys from yard to yard, or run around with them on stick horses in Horner's Field, which is now Eva Walker Park. Now that was many, many years ago. So I'm very, very excited to hear what he has to share about his ancestors in and around Fauquier County. So Michael Parker was born at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., and reared in the Frytown community of Warrenton. He received his early education at Rosenwald Elementary and Fauquier High. Michael is currently a semi-retired truck driver. He's married, has 4 children, and resides in Warrenton. He's a member of the Faith Christian Church and International Outreach Center. And during his spare time, Michael thoroughly enjoys genealogy research. He also loves music. In fact, from 1969 to 1971, he played saxophone in a local band called Shades of Soul. Later on, in 84 and 85, he performed with a band called Stax. So, hello, Michael.
Hello, Miss Christine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
That's good.
It is such a joy to have you join us today. I can't begin to tell you how excited we are to have you here and to hear what you have to share about your ancestors in and around Fauquier County.
Yes.
And
You all been a great help, Karen, and all through the years in me getting what I needed to go forward and continue. So my heart goes out for the museum and for the work that you all have done and the help that you've given me in this.
oh, well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we're very much appreciated. We have files with loads of information about you and your family, and your background. So we appreciate that. It's a great deal to share with others. But before we get to our conversation, I do want to take the opportunity to congratulate your son, Mike Parker, for his wonderful display of talent on the American Idol competition during the course of the past several years. And certainly the folks of Warrenton, Fauquier, and even afar realize that he has a wonderful career in music ahead of him. So we want you to know that we're very, very happy for your family and very, very proud of what he's doing. And we wish him the very best.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
My wife and I and family appreciate that. And I know he surely does. And I'll give him that message.
That's a good thing. Yeah, he seems like a fine young man, as do your other sons. Yes, they're a beautiful family. But what I'd like to do is to start out with some few basic genealogy questions, about your research in genealogy. And then we'll move to your families among the Proctors and the Johnsons. Okay. So first of all, just let us know what it was that caused you to become interested in doing your genealogy research.
One thing in particular, and then something else came along like it did for everyone. But early, I guess in my early teens, I asked my mother about her mother. My mother's was Elvita Parker, married to Clark Parker. I came along. But I asked Mom at one time about her mother. And she said that her mother passed when her and her sister, Aunt Gladys, when she was 2 years old. And Gladys is 4 years older than Mom. And so that was just the question that I asked. So I guess later from that, I never knew any of my grandparents. All of them had passed, before I was born. So later, I know I asked the question. I said, Mama, did you ever have a picture of your mother? And she said, yes. And in Madison Town, that's a part of Warrenton. And her and Aunt Gladys shared this, I believe she said it was a 12-room house, and both of them had their families at that time. And like so many places years ago, churches or anything, they catch on fire.
That's right, fires.
Yep. And so she said that they had a picture of her on the mantle. So I guess when the house is on fire, the picture is not a lot of concern. But in that, Christine, when she told me that, it was something that stuck with me, that I said, I want to see a picture of my grandmother before I die. Why I thought that way, I don't know. Now, I didn't get to work on that at that time because, I'm still a teenager. So when Roots came out in 77, I guess like everything else, that lit the spark in trying to find something. So I'm going to come back to this question towards the end, or at the end of our conversation, because I think it's going to do good for who is listening to this as far as what not to do. So I'm going to come back to this question about my grandmother's picture.
Okay.
All right.
We'll make a little note of that. Come back.
All right.
Talk about grandma's photo. So tell me, how far back are you able to trace your ancestry?
Well, I've been working on my mother's side. Father's side, I haven't done that much. Mother's side, I've gotten back to the census records of 1850. And that would be my great grandparents, Alexander and Mary Johnson. And in those census records, they are from this area, which would be the Upperville area.
Okay.
And Trap Road is right off of 50.
Right, yeah.
And if you're going into Upperville, it's just as you get into Upperville.
Right.
If you make a left on Trap Road and go up about a half a mile and make that next left.
Hmm.
The name is that long. It starts with 2 L's. I can't pronounce it. Wouldn't try to.
Hmm.
Willisville.
What is it?
Someone
Somebody.
said Willisville.
No,
Well, that's not, it's not Willisville.
no. This road is
Off the
right
Trap
off
Road.
of Trap Road off of
Oh, it
50.
used to be Bowling Brook Road, and now it's Patrick Street. I lived on it for 30 years.
Hmm.
It
This
used to
one,
be Bowling Brook Road.
this particular road would have carried you right back into the mountain. That where the Proctors and the Johnsons lived.
Hmm.
And
And it's not Bowling Brook?
no, when I was there about
The
5,
Langolan?
did it start with 2 L's?
Yes.
Okay, that's the road.
Oh, well, like Golan is on the right, that's Trap Road, right?
Yeah, right. You make if you were going into Upperville on 50, you would make a left on Trap Road, go about a half a mile and make the first left, which is this road that I can't pronounce.
Okay, we go in different directions, because
Okay.
if you're going west on 50, you turn right to Trap Road, left to Patrick Street.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're going west towards Winchester,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
you turn right on Trap Road and
Yeah.
left on Patrick Street, which used to be Bowling Brook.
Okay, well, that must be further up than this road that I'm speaking of.
Well, they don't quite meet, but they're right there together. You know, they don't completely intersect, but the left-hand one, you get to first, and then the right-hand one, which is Trap Road,
Okay,
coming off of 50.
all right. Huh.
And Langolan is off of Trap Road. It really
Okay.
is. Very famous farm back there.
Right, and you can only go back so far now. I walked back down and it had one of the older houses, stone house there on the right-hand side.
Hmm.
I talked to the gentleman when you make that left
Yeah.
at the first house. We
Mhm.
talked for a good while about that. And
Hmm.
but you can't get back into that mountain. But from the census records, the written census record,
Mhm.
the Proctors and the Johnsons were in close proximity because the numbers of the houses, 137, 138,
Hmm.
I can't tell you which
Yeah.
one it was, but if you
Yeah.
went from one to the other, that's how close it was.
Hmm.
And I guess the reason for that, my great grandmother, Margaret, married Samuel K. Proctor,
Okay.
which lived next door. So they grew
Yeah.
up together. That was her first marriage, and then she married William Tapscott.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm. So that's interesting about Upperville. Our
Yeah.
church is there.
Yeah.
Like my husband pastors, and we pass Trap Road anytime.
Right.
And then Patrick Street, there's quite a community, an older African-American community up on Patrick Street. Some members came to our church. Yeah, some Foxes live there.
Right.
Mhm. So
Wow.
quite a few Black families were back there, charities.
Yeah, well, that's going back from reading the book that Kevin Grigsby, I really enjoyed that book of the families that lived back in that Willisville area and all. Yeah.
On Patrick Street.
Yeah.
So your family was off of Trap Road, Langola Farm. So
Okay, I
Yeah.
guess that,
that's what
yeah.
it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating, fascinating. It's good to learn, as we share with others.
Mm-hmm.
There's something to learn all the time about our
Mhm.
ancestors.
Yes.
We pass them on. So then what resources did you use when you were collecting your information?
What information in the courthouses
Mhm.
and what you have there is, I guess, somewhat limited, but you have your marriage licenses there. death records,
certificates.
personal property, well, your birth, well, that would be handwritten, you know, it would be in the books themselves. But I guess that is what I used and what Cortez and I used once I caught up with him. And this is from a family search. And I guess these right now are probably 8, 9 years old. And he sent me hundreds of them. And we would go through them and narrow it down to what we felt was right. And then I would do the legwork, going out talking to families of that name, saying, do you know this? Do you know that? And finally, what I spoke to you earlier about when I said Johnson, one of the members of our church said, Mike, said, talk to Mary Smith. Her grandparents were Johnsons. And I said, really? So when I started talking to her, the names of her grandfather's siblings started coming out. And I said, oh boy. So that, you know, that's how you connect. So marriage license, census records really gives you not only the person that you are looking for, but it gives you the whole spectrum, the wife, the siblings, and all.
Occupations.
Yeah.
Very good information. And then you talked to a lot of people, didn't you? You got a lot of information from others.
Oh, yeah.
For example, the person who sent you all this information. He had a lot of, and I can say of his grandmother being born in 1877. She lived until 1972. So that's where you have a gold mine of information. That's right.
She was almost 100 years old. Plus he knew his great grandmother, Lucy and Texan. And they were the ones that were born up here in that mountain. So once I caught up with him, that's where we started working together with things that I didn't know, because the marriage license certificate of William Tapscott and Margaret Proctor, William gave the name of his mother and father. Margaret didn't. So I never knew where to go with Margaret. Who was she? What was her maiden name? Then once I got with Cortez, he found it through one of her sons that was out in Montana through marriage license, that she was born Marguerite Johnson. So now I knew what to look for in the census records. And we found about 3 or 4 different Marguerite Johnsons. But then we had to narrow it down of the age. Some were white, some were mulatto, some were black from what it said. So with the ages and all, out of these Marguerites, I think it was about 4 of them. I told Cortez, I said, well, this is about the best one. I think it missed her age by maybe a year. But it fell into place later on as we started adding things in.
And you mentioned the Tapscotts. So they're the Tapscotts from Madison Town and Pride Town on that way.
Those
like Helena and Butch and
Arthur, Connie, Ann, Murray T, Helena, all of them. William Tapscott was married before he married my great grandmother.
Okay.
So there were children that out of his first marriage, Shelton, Jack,
So,
Amanda.
Mr. Willie.
Okay, he's coming in later.
Okay.
Shelton, Jack, Amanda,
Mhm.
Catherine,
Mhm.
those four. Now that Amanda, his daughter, even though his wife's name was Amanda,
Okay.
his daughter, Amanda, had two sons, George
Okay.
and Walter Tapscott.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
George Tapscott is the father of Willie
Okay.
and Mary
Okay.
Tapscott.
Yeah, that's part of where George got his name.
Yep, that's why. And Uncle Ham,
Yeah.
Uncle Ham Murray,
Right.
that's why Hamilton came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're all connected there.
Yeah.
So did you find any surprises that you might want to share with us as you were doing your research? Did things pretty much fall into place for you?
After knowing who was then, and once we narrowed it down to make sure that what we had with the Johnsons, that it connected to the son, Robert Johnson,
Mhm.
then we knew we had the family
Right.
intact then. Now, Margaret Proctor, she was Marguerite Johnson to start with. Somewhere she changed. She must didn't like Marguerite, and she went as Margaret A.
Okay.
So she went as Margaret A. Proctor. She married Samuel K. Proctor. His parents was Levi and Hannah
Mhm.
Proctor. They were all free
Is that right?
because, yeah, this is an 1850 census.
Mhm.
So if they are in the census records, this is something that if anyone is getting into genealogy, that if they can trace African Americans before, I guess, 66, I don't know, 1866, I don't know, but after the Civil War would have been when they would have been included in the census.
Right. That's
But
true.
anytime before that,
Mhm.
before the end of the Civil War, if you can get your ancestry in the census, that
Mhm.
means that they were free.
Yes.
They weren't
Mhm.
slaves.
That's right.
So
Hmm.
Margaret married Samuel K. Proctor. And I think the biggest surprise was really getting to know her, because we've tracked her up until 1910, and she fades out. No death records or anything that we can find, and I really want to find that and where she's buried.
Yes.
But she had about 9 children, and one of them was Clarence L Proctor. And you can go online with that. He was a Buffalo soldier out in
marvelous.
Montana.
In
Yes, yes.
Woo.
And
Tell us what you know about him.
that was where Cortez found him, and he married. And the good thing about, and I think that was, I can't remember the year right now, but it was in the 1800s.
Mhm.
But Montana asked, I know Virginia didn't, and I don't know if they do now or not. On your marriage license, they ask for your mother's maiden name.
Yes. Mhm.
And that's how we came up with who Margaret Proctor really was, what her maiden name was, because Clarence L Proctor gave his mother's maiden name,
Okay.
and Samuel K. Proctor was the father. But this was interesting that he got banged up a lot during the Indian wars and all that they were having out there. And then later they shipped them out. Roosevelt was in office at that time, and they were fighting something down in Cuba. And a lot of the soldiers caught malaria and different things. And he was pretty bad off. He had to go to New York, and he stayed there in the hospital, I think, for about 6 months. He came back to DC, where his mother and my grandmother's the sisters and all met them or was with them. But then after he got out of the service, he was still sick, and the doctors told him, and this malaria that he had and something else about his lungs. And they told him he should move to Arizona because of the climate.
Right.
And he did. And he was married in Montana. Then he remarried again while he was in Arizona. So he put in for his pension. And the bureaucracy of it went on for over a year. And during that time, he was health getting worse. It seemed like he was kind of delusional. And he hung himself in the rafters. And the funny thing about that is the day that he hung himself, and with him going through the bureaucracy of the government to get his money, he hung himself that day, and the check came, I think, for $700 and some back during that time, that day. But if anyone want to look at that, pull up Sergeant Clarence L Proctor, Buffalo Soldiers. And they just did in 2014, they did commencement for him in Arizona, and that's where he's buried.
Isn't that marvelous?
Yeah.
What an interesting man. Fascinating story.
Right.
Very fascinating story. Thank you. So anybody, any of your ancestors, anybody of interest who would like to know, just pull him up. Clarence L Proctor.
Clarence L Proctor, Buffalo
Soldiers.
Soldiers, and it should come up.
Did you say something about a movie?
Oh, what I was saying about this, if you read it, you could make a movie out of what he went through while he was in the service, and after he contracted these diseases that he was in while he was in Florida, Cuba, wherever he was.
That's a fascinating surprise.
Yep, that was a surprise. I really liked it
in many ways.
And I think Cortez, who I work with out Jersey, has his rifle that he had while he was out west, doing that.
That's amazing. Yes. What a find. So do you have any particular advice that you would give others who would be beginning to do their research in genealogy? That you might want to share?
Yes, I guess I could. And I guess from the things that I can think back now that I wish I had done, that's about the best advice that I can give them. And I would start with know whom and what you are looking for when you start. Because as you start this, a lot of names, people and all are going to come up.
Yeah, and it will emerge.
Yeah, and they're going to do it fast.
Yeah.
So if you try to jump from one to the other, it's going to take your sense of direction off
Yeah.
as to where, if you're going to start with one of your grandparents,
Mhm.
start with that grandparent, get a census record as far back as you can go. So that will give you that grandparent, your great grandparent, your great great grandparent.
Mhm.
And so then you're going to have a lot of names, census records to work with.
Yes.
Census records, death records,
Mhm.
marriage records.
Yeah.
Now, I'm computer illiterate, and I know my wife is on this
What is on the call?
on this call, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have gotten this.
Yeah.
Now, ancestry and all of that is beautiful,
Yeah.
because I got her just one day to pull up
Mhm.
Texana Lucy
Yeah.
Proctor.
Oh.
And when she did it, it came up. And this screen, it's funny, I've never seen it like that since. It had a pinkish background.
Mhm.
And it said that these names were looking for Texana,
Right.
Lucy Proctor,
That's true.
information
That's right.
on them
That's right.
in
Yeah.
Fauquier County,
Yeah.
Virginia.
Yeah. You connect.
So that's where I got Cortez, Don Johnston's number, and there was another number of a female,
Mhm.
but she had a email address. So since this was 2012, she put that in 98. So we never was able to get in touch with her
Mhm.
until later.
Yeah.
But that's where I met up with Cortez and Don, and that's where we really got the ball rolling. So the information that I would give to anyone that is just starting, especially,
Mhm.
is to know who and what it is that you want to find out about,
Mhm.
and run it until you can't run it anymore.
Mhm.
Then with all of the names and the people that contributed to that,
Mhm.
then you can work with that. But
Right.
you have that list
Yes.
to work from.
Mhm.
The other one is talk to any of the older people that you know.
You hear that a lot. Yes.
Do that.
Talk to the elders.
If I had done that back then, Mr. Charlie Madison, Mr. Buddy Madison,
Right.
all of them,
Right.
because
Yeah.
my grandmother used to come up to George's house in Madison town.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, my mom said that Mr. Buddy, Mr. Lee
Yeah.
Madison,
Yeah.
his wife, Ms.
Mhm.
Rebecca,
Yeah.
knew
Mm.
her mother.
My. Mm.
No, I didn't have sense enough to talk to them.
Yeah, just to know.
But yeah, and that's what I would say in the area where you knew that your ancestors grew up, or the ones that you're looking for.
Mhm.
Find the oldest people, not that they have to be kin to you,
Right.
but the oldest people in that neighborhood or surrounding area that you think may know anything about them.
Yes.
And they can give you a lot of information about your ancestry from this person.
Mhm. That's good.
Now, don't do like I did. And the other thing is,
Is this what
if
you
you
did?
mad at somebody in your family, you don't talk to them, go
Make
talk to
up.
them first.
Say, make up.
Go talk to them first. So I'm going to tell you at the end why that is very important.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So we want you want people to be focused
Yeah.
who they're searching for until they can
Stay
find.
focused, stay
Yeah.
focused on what it is you're looking for and go as far as you can with that.
Right.
Then, because others are going to fall in,
Right.
members of the
Fall
family.
in.
So then you got to figure out, well, how am I going to do this? Who am I going to go to next?
Right.
But stay focused on that one or two that you
Yes.
are looking at.
Then talk to the elders.
Talk to the elders.
And don't mess up like you're gonna
And
tell
if it's anybody that you ain't been talking to in your family for a while, go to them first,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they may have something very important, like I'm going to tell you later.
I'm anxiously waiting.
All right.
Because now, as we move on to the proctors, do we want to see if we have any questions?
Oh, yes.
If anyone
Okay.
has any questions. I see a lot in chat room, but I don't have access to that,
Mhm.
to the questions. So maybe toward the end,
Okay.
we'll have a source to bring those questions to us and we can bring them up. So now, the Proctors and the Johnsons, you told us a bit about your ancestors up in Upperville.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's where they live in Upperville. Do you know anything about where they went to school or the churches, church affiliations?
Or
Or any occupation?
I can,
What is it that you know about them?
my great grandfather, which was Alexander Johnson, he was blacksmith.
Oh, that's a common occupation.
Mary was his wife. She was just, from what the census records say, housewife and all. Yeah. The Proctors, Samuel, Margaret's first husband, he was, I have to say, he was very business minded. Do you remember the lawyers lawyer in Warrenton, Dulaney? Does that name ring a bell? Oakley Farm, got to be somewhere up
Oakley Farms in
there,
Upperville.
Upperville area.
Right on 50.
If I'm not mistaken,
Delaney sounds familiar.
that may be Delaney's farm and all. But Samuel
Yes, it is.
Proctor, pardon?
Sorry to interrupt, but yes, it is.
Okay. Samuel Proctor farmed, and he would, I don't know if he rented or more like a sharecrop business with the farmers, because he would plant his own corn and stuff like that and whatever, and he would sell it. As a matter of fact, Margaret had a store in Upperville. My great grandmother sold liquor, shoes,
really?
and yeah.
A little grocery store, a little,
I don't know
country
what it
store.
was, but I would love to be. I don't know if Upperville has records of that like that. I haven't been there in Upperville to say, do you all have county, little town records of what went on back in the 1800s?
So this would have been in the 1800s?
Yeah, this would have been in the 1800s. And they
extraordinary.
They were very outgoing to make money, and so he did that on the farms as far as planting his crops and all, and then selling, keeping what he needed. And so she had a store. And the reason for that, I have it's in here somewhere. This is a war crimes claim file.
War crimes.
Yep. That she filed
Who is she again?
Margaret
Margaret.
A. Proctor Tapscott at this time when she filed this, and it was I think Congress enacted this in 1871 or 1872 after the Civil War, and it was for what the Union Army, they confiscated, whatever you had to feed the army, your horses, your cows, your food, and all of that. And so at that time, they were living in Upperville area. And in this, it says, she gave a deposition of what happened during that time, during the war. And she said that the shelling, the bombs, the shooting, everything was going on around the house. General Kilpatrick, General Singleton, I think it was 63 and 64, they raided their house of the property twice. And she goes into a long description of what went on at that time. They helped a Union soldier from Maryland that had gotten shot, and I think he stayed with them for 6 months. They paid for the doctor bills and all, and brought him back around. And his name was Charles Davis. I can't remember what part of Maryland it was. I don't know if it even said that, but he wrote back to them and thanked them for that. It was even a Confederate soldier that was wounded, that they tried to nurse, bring back, had doctors, but he passed and they buried him. But it was really heartwarming when I read that. And it's about 3 pages. And I ended up, tears was running down my eyes, because it was like my great-grandmother was talking to me at that time, and you could just put yourself back in that time of what was going on and what they were going through. Now, I can say now that I didn't think about that, but you asked me about Clarence. That one probably is the best of what I've found so far in my genealogy, was what my great-grandmother said during that time, during the Civil War.
That's marvelous. It's wonderful memories of, you have other stories of all
Right,
this.
and when you can sit and read something like that, that is truthful, it's not a book that, fiction like,
it's real,
but for it being real.
And then to be a part of your family.
Right. It's amazing.
It is.
It's amazing what they went through and how they survived. Yeah. Now, the question I think that you asked me was about maybe what churches and all that they went to. The church in Paris.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this because I never did find the name of it.
Mount Olive.
And Methodist.
Mount Olive, United Methodist.
Popular.
Say it again.
Popular. AME.
No, I think that's in Auburn, where the Tapscotts are. Poplar Fork, or Poplar Fork. Some people used to call it Double Poplar.
Right.
But this particular church is in Paris, right off of 50.
Right.
And the church is no longer there now. And I stopped by, spoke with Mr. Stribling. Was it Mr. William
William
Stribling?
Stribling, yes.
Yeah, before he
Right,
passed.
Right, yeah.
And I always say, like I was telling you, I gotta hurry up and get there because I'm
Yeah.
scared to death of snakes.
Right,
But,
yeah.
but apparently,
Yeah, we got-
if it was a cemetery there, because I know that the Johnson Murray's, Mary told me that her grandmother wanted to come back to Paris to the Johnson Cemetery.
Mm,
So that's where I know they went to church at and all. So I really got to find out if any markers are there of any Johnsons that are buried there.
There could be some current landowners who might have some
Maybe,
people on their property.
maybe.
It could be.
Well, I guess if there is a cemetery there, it should still be there because
Yeah,
that space was
yes.
still, still there. This has been maybe 6-7 years ago when I was there.
Yeah. We
And,
talked to Mr. Stribling's son, and he gave me the information, so I'll find it again.
Okay.
Make sure that you see it.
Okay.
It's fascinating. Yeah. So now, come on and tell us the story that you've been holding back.
Yeah.
That was
Well, what I said before was, who do you talk to?
yeah. That was it.
You talk to any and everybody that you can, members of the family, the oldest members of your family, of your community, to try and find as much information as you possibly can. Now, I started out, and what I said, I wanted to find a picture
That's right.
of my grandmother. And it was simply because my mother had said, well, her mother passed when she was 2 years old, and they had a picture, but the picture got burned up.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking now, it's got to be another picture somewhere. And I want to see a picture of my grandmother before I die. Now, my father, I have a picture of his parents, my grandparents. So that was my goal, to try and do that. So I still haven't gone anywhere. So I might have a few more days to keep looking. But my mother passed in 79. And I'm not going to call any names, but her niece gave her some silverware when her mother passed. That was my mother's sister.
Okay.
So out of that, when my mother passed, my cousin called me and said, Mike, said, find that silverware that I gave to Aunt LB. So my mother, with what she had done, she had all of her personal belongings and everything. She'd give it to, it was only one girl, Peggy, my sister. She left everything to Peggy of her personal items. So I told Peggy about it. So Peggy and our cousin wasn't getting along no way. So when we did find the silverware, Peggy gave it to somebody else. And man, my cousin called me back, laid me out to the dogs.
Oh, righty.
So I never talked to her since that time. She passed in 98, so this was 79. So I guess almost 20 years, I suppose. But it was my dumbness, because if I had been thinking, and I knew she was in DC where a lot of Lucy Proctor's children were.
Yeah, see that connection.
And because even my mother had said that, but it never dawned on me. So when she passed, I still didn't know until I talked with her son, I guess about 2005. And we were talking and I was telling him, we were going over the genealogy and what I had had. So I said, Tinkle, you know what? I said, I started out looking for a picture of my grandmother, your great grandmother, Nettie. He told me, he said, you know what? He said, Ellen had this picture in the china closet, whatever, there in the room. Said he asked her, said, who was that? She said, that's my grandmother and grandfather.
Oh, man.
And I said, oh my gracious. So his mother had passed, then he had put everything in storage. He wasn't doing that well. And he passed before I could get that picture.
So the picture was there
So
all that time.
that picture was there all that time, but I wasn't speaking to the person that had the picture, in which I should have been doing. So that's what I want to tell everybody. If you and somebody in the family is not getting along and you need to get information, go get the information. Go get it, because they may have exactly what you needed, and that's exactly what she had.
Wow, just make up and settle things. Get along.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. So it's really been a great opportunity to talk to you, Michael.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen you in decades. But I do have fond memories of you when you were a little boy running around Haiti.
Now about that.
And chasing little girls and
What
little
was
boys.
it? 30, about 30,
Yeah.
35 kids up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
down through
right.
there.
Because your father, Mr. Parker, he was a barber.
Barbara,
And he
cabs.
drove a cab, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you
Yes,
come on
indeed.
down the hill, you'd be over on the pike a lot.
Yes,
On
indeed.
Alexandria Pike. And
Yes.
run back,
Back through the woods.
You're right.
And when you was speaking of the park, you
Yeah.
forgot to leave out those nettle weeds.
The nettle weeds, yeah, everybody knows about the nettle weeds. Oh,
You be playing and fall into them, and they would just burn you up.
Yes. Everybody who knows about Hornisfield
Know that
knows
those
about
nettle weeds
those
are in
nettle
there.
weeds, yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yes,
really,
indeed.
it's been a delight to hear from you. You just have a wealth of information, far more than I had imagined.
Yeah,
So we just thank you so much for taking the time to share it.
well, I hope what I've said, will help someone
Yes.
that's
Sure it will.
on the Skype
Yeah.
to help them along. But
Yeah.
they were, my main things were the census records,
Mhm.
birth records,
Mhm.
death records,
Mhm.
marriage license. But like I said, if you go on to Ancestry, if anybody else is on there for what you're looking for, then you got someone to team up with, on that. And
So maybe we might check to see if there is somebody who has any questions. We can open up the mic.
Can I give Mike my number?
yes, may I borrow your pen for just one moment? I need this number bad.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
267.
Ms. Lewis,
All right, Mickey.
267
2
357
357.
8514.
8514.
That's right. That's
Uh-huh.
all you need.
Okay.
And
I'm
yours.
I'm gonna give you a call this evening. I gotta go
Please
now
do.
with Michael. They're gonna do some pictures or something other with him in Warrenton. But when I get back in, I'll surely give you a call this evening.
Please do.
I
And
sure will.
I thank the moderator, and I didn't mean to butt in.
It's okay. You're very welcome.
And I'm sure we're related.
Say that again. Did he say you thought we were related?
I said, and I'm sure we're related.
We probably are.
Yeah. If you run it far enough.
so you taking questions, Ms. Lewis?
Yes, please,
So Mr. Williams, um,
Mr. Williams.
It says Jerry Williams up there and it's Mike Parker, really.
oh, okay, I'm sorry. What is it, Mike?
Parker.
Parker,
After Mr. Parker,
Parker.
I apologize. I didn't
That's all
listen in
right.
the beginning. The Proctors.
Yes,
I'm a
ma'am.
native Uppervillian. I was born in Upperville.
Uh-huh.
And so I met William. I had to go to Washington to go to high school. And my story is in the book by Kevin about Houdsville, by Kevin.
Oh,
My
okay.
whole story is in there. But I went to high school with a William Proctor, and he later married Rose Warner, and I met him many years later and tried to figure out how William and Rose hooked up, because I knew Rose was from Upperville and that William had been it. So do you think William Proctor's one of the younger? We're in our 90s now. William and I would be 91, 92 years old.
Wow. Wow.
I'm sorry, what's your name again?
What was your name?
My name is Helen Outlaw Carr.
Oh, Sister Carr, I'm sorry. How are you?
Okay, I'm fine.
Were you any kin to the outlaws down in Nokesville?
Manassas.
Yeah, Manassas.
Yes, they're my first cousins.
Off
children.
28. Kenny Outlaw?
Kenny Outlaw is my first cousin.
Yeah, and Kenny passed.
Right, Kenny, all of the only one still living is Dee. Barbara passed, Kenny passed, and Billy passed.
Oh my gracious.
Well, Dee and Daria are still living. Yeah, but okay, now William Proctor, do you think he's on that same? Well, the surprise was when I met him later years, when I used to be the financial secretary for the Upperville Cemetery.
Yes, that's
and
right.
he and his wife are buried in there, and they were paying their dues and stuff. Yeah. So do you remember William coming through there? Is he in that family?
No, ma'am. I don't know of that.
Okay.
What it is with the Proctors, Harriet Proctor, she was prominent in this Upperville area. My great grandmother married Samuel Proctor. Samuel Proctor was Harriet's brother. So I didn't, well, all of this was before my time or anything.
Oh, okay.
So the only Proctors that I would be kin to would be the ones that Margaret had by Samuel Proctor. And I didn't know any of them because they were all born in 1850s, 60s, and all through that. But I was just, it's someone that I'm trying to get in touch with. Are you familiar with Kevin Grigsby?
Kevin wrote the book, right?
Right.
He's my cousin on my mother's side.
Whoa.
I need to get in touch with Kevin. I've been trying to do it. And I would, do you have a pen by any chance?
Yes, I do.
Okay. My name is Mike Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R.
What is your last name?
Parker, P-A-R.
Oh, Parker, okay, right.
And my number is 540 878
okay
3389.
All right.
And I would appreciate it to the highest if I can get in touch with him, because I talked to, from that book, my wife was teaching the kettle run at that time, and somebody gave her that book, and she brought it home. She said, "I know you want to read this." And so while I was going the other way, instead of, because I hadn't found out who Margaret was or Johnson, I was going for the Proctors. And so I talked to, I'm more than sure you know Miss Shirley Richardson.
Shirley Richardson, yes, I do. I know Shirley.
Yes, indeed, up in St. Louis, because
Right.
she was in the book, and I went up and talked with her. I talked to her several times. And so it's just that those Proctors are a different side of,
Oh, okay.
from me. And but yeah, I really enjoyed talking. Her and her sister lived side by side, I think, when I was
Right.
there.
So there's a
Yeah, all of that, all of those on my mother's side, and then a lot of people at Upperville on, your dad's side. Paris is point from my dad's side. I don't think that cemetery has any headstones though, because we were trying to find information about people being buried there.
Oh, you know what? And I was talking, I've talked to Miss Christine about that to see if there was, when the church, Mr. Stribling told me, that the church dissolved. I guess it was because of membership and all.
Right.
But I wonder whoever had the records of the church.
I don't know. I know Miss Leela Allen merged in with the Methodist Church in Upperville, and then that church was sold to a private family. I don't know if any records exist. I know I used to help Ms. Allen when she merged in with Upperville to help get finances and things straight and all that, because she and I live right next door to each other.
Oh, okay.
So,
Patrick Street.
well, I don't want to monopolize. I've just been fascinated to hear all that. I just wanted to hear about William. I was just wondering. I often wondered how William hooked up with Rose Warner. I just couldn't imagine how they got together. So I thought maybe that was the connection. Yeah.
No, indeed. I wish I could help you on that, but I can't.
It's been a joy talking to you, Mrs. Carr, and seeing you
Okay.
again.
This was very good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it
Yes,
a lot.
indeed. Thank you so very much.
Well, Michael, there's a question on the chat that's from Joseph Roby.
I'm here. I can
Okay,
can
thank
talk.
you. Thank you, sir.
You don't have to read it.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for your presentation talking about your family. I'm actually related to the Delaney family.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Was the lawyer, I can't remember his first name, that I don't know if he's still practicing in Warrenton or not. Is he same Delaney's?
Yes. You're probably talking about Benjamin. Ben Delaney, or maybe Rozier.
Probably Ben.
Okay.
More likely. They would have been on the corner right there of 4th Street, I think.
Yeah, he passed away in 2009.
Oh,
He was my great uncle.
Oh, and
But
wait a minute,
his
your name
daughter.
again? Your name again?
My name's Joseph Roby, R-O-B-Y. And I live in Philadelphia.
Oh my gracious.
But I'm actually planning a research trip down to Fauquier and Loudon in June. So I'm hoping to stop by the plains and a whole bunch of other stops to do some research.
Really?
Here I come back in again. I'm sorry to be so rude, but my grandmother was a cook for the Delaney family for years on Oakley, and she lived with them in DC on California Street and traveled back and forth. And
oh my goodness!
Small world, ain't it?
What was her name, Helen?
I'll be taking over your whole show. I'll back out.
No, indeed.
Well, why don't
He said,
I,
what was her name? Miss Carr.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Helen Carr.
Yeah. He asked, what was her name? The
My
cook.
grandmother's name was Mildred Briscoe Marshall. Mildred Marshall. And they called her Millie.
my dad's sitting next to me and he remembers her.
Oh, boy.
She was a fantastic cook. And, she worked for them for years, right?
Well, I'm going to give you both my phone number and anybody else can write it down too.
All right.
So it's 215
Uh-huh.
870
Uh-huh.
6927.
Tell them about Susan.
And I'm actually doing I have a family Bible records, Dulaney Bible records that list all of the enslaved people at Oakley about 1860, and I donated the records to AAHA. I don't know, a year and a half ago.
Do you think that I doubt it if that would have been in the Bible, because Samuel Proctor, he was free. But do you think that there would have been any records of what he did there at the farm, as far as his cropping that he did and what he gave to Oakley, for their part of it? Would it be any records of that?
I would think I would think there would have to be in the Fauquier County records. I would think there would have to be something. No, I don't think. Well,
yeah, not the county records. No, I'm speaking of the property records itself, because that wouldn't have went to the county. I can't see that going to
well,
the county.
if they sold part of their, if they sold him like an acre or two, I would think that would have to go through.
No. He never bought any land from Oakley. He went. They would let him use this portion of land, and he would give them so much of the produce that was like sharecropping.
Yeah, sharecropping.
But he didn't live on the place or anything like that.
Okay. Would this have been before 1877?
Yeah.
It could be in the Freedmen's Bureau records. I can look in there.
Uh-huh.
Because they have contracts and those types of records in there. So if Samuel went through the Freedmen's Bureau, which is basically it was the U.S. Army was in the South during Reconstruction, and they were helping both African Americans and also poor white refugees after the war.
Right.
This
would have been before and during the war.
Okay.
Because he died. Because he died in 1870.
Yeah. Well, there should be something then. Certainly, because the records start in 1863 or 4. So there should be something between then and 1870.
Okay.
And all those records are now on Ancestry.
All right.
They're also on Family Search. Unfortunately, only some are indexed. You have to just go page by page and read them, and a lot of them. So.
Okay. All right.
So we thank you, Mr. Delaney, for joining us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Sure.
I really
And I can
appreciate
also-
that, Mr. Rogan.
I also might be able to help with if there's any Langolan connection, because I'm also related to the Powells who own Langolan back during the war and before that. So, but we can talk.
Right. Okay. All right.
All right. Thanks.
Well, thank you so very much. I got to get to Warrenton now. I got to be
All
there
right.
by 2:30. I'm gonna get a ticket, I guess.
All right. And thank you too,
But
Helen.
thank you. Yes, indeed. God bless you.
Again, we thank you so much for your participation. It's been a
No,
joy.
you ain't
Truly,
gotta
truly has.
Thank me. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
And on May 24th, Sean Redmouse from the Fauquier History Museum at the old jail is going to come. And he's going to have a conversation, give a presentation about freedom seekers and the runaway slaves. So we hope you'll
Wow.
join us then. And thank you so much for your participation and your support today.
Wow.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Mike.
Thank you.
Please give our best to your son.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
You might want to get his autograph for me.
All right. I'm gonna get you a t-shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am. What size you want?
Oh, well, all right.
Okay. I'm gonna get that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Are the past podcasts available from as far as audio or video?
Yes, they're available on YouTube and on the Facebook website.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, Mickey. I
I'll
will
talk
be
to
in
you
touch
tonight.
with you this evening.
All right.
All right,
I
buddy.
bet.
Yes, indeed, cuz. Ain't that something?
Yes, all
Oh, the Lord is good. He know what he's doing when I
All
don't know
the
what
time.
he's doing.
right. He always knows. And he knows what we're doing.
Yes, indeed.
He helps
Yes,
us along the
indeed.
way. Thank you.
Let me
again,
get
Mike.
this all right.
Been a way I can assist you.
Oh, yeah, I'm just trying
It's
to
been a
get this.
wonderful
I'll get it back. I'll get it all back together here where I can remember it sooner or later.
Yeah, you got it. It was a wonderful presentation. Truly, truly
Thank you.
appreciate you.